I mean, that's in his nature. He's a very sort of impulsive, reckless kind of guy who seems to think he can sort of solve things with his fists. Really feels that the world has been very unjust to him, and that the problem is all out there. None of it is in here or in here, and that's part of the journey for him, really. So inevitably he's going to kick against the system, but it is also a system that needs kicking against. So you've got these sort of two things happening simultaneously. And he's also, thrown in with a cast of characters who he would never ordinarily rub up alongside. And again, that's part of the joy of this show and this narrative, really, is learning to care for those folks and learning to show up for them. But yes, certainly in the beginning, he likes to cause a stink.
Miss Chris is the large and in charge one, first of all. And she is the authoritarian figure. She runs everything. There are doctors above her, but they just come in, do their thing and leave. Otherwise, Miss Chris is running the joint. She is also a hardworking woman. She is not well paid. She is trying to just keep everything together, keep it scheduled, keep it on time. And I keep saying, I created a woman who put herself in a box. And in this box is how things are run. So she's got blinkers on. She knows times. She knows compliance. She knows all the things that are required to make this system run. And then it gets questioned. And that is her challenge, is, do I ignore the questioning? Do I ignore the apparently different? And do I make a decision myself, Miss Chris's self, to do something about it, as opposed to waiting for authority number one, number two, number three, for the visiting authorities to get things done?
And Pepper's the one who makes her question everything.
Pepper's the one that makes her question it. Because Pepper knows that he doesn't belong there. And also he gets to see what's completely wrong there, that Miss Chris either sees and ignores or doesn't see, because this is what an institution is. This is how it's run. This is how it is. And so I kind of made Miss Chris an immigrant because I thought it would be important that she not fully get the system, but she gets how the system's run. It's like the first time your job, you said, these are the rules of the job. This is what you do. You follow these and everything will be fine. And I think that's kind of Miss Chris's box.
She has to deal with some pretty terrifying things, though. I'm thinking of some cleanup efforts that we see early on. That doesn't shake her at all.
Oh, and I was like, surely something must have happened before. And that's that Silver Door discussion that, well, I don't know whether we're going to talk about it, but the fact that she knows that something has been there. She knows it's happened before. And it's like, we're not looking at this. We are not paying attention to that was handled, it's done. But she obviously is very familiar with some accidents. Cleanup.
First of all, it's a very special story. And it's really about what's happening in our culture and has been happening in our culture for a long time, which is about mental health and also about what it means to be a person who deals with mental health challenges and how we function as a society in relation to that. So that was the big sort of context for me. As to the character, Victor Laval is a more than just literate, a novelist of first of all, of great renown, New York Times best-selling novelist, and a person of great substance. And so were all the other people who were involved. This is Ridley Scott. David Zucker is part of this. Chris Cantwell, Karen Kusama, Dan Stevens, all so many of my friends who are in the New York theater are a part of this. So it had all the texture, the feeling, the creation. And I've been saying this, I read 2 lines of this script and I called my agents and my managers and I said, I'm in. That's it. That's all I needed to know, because it's so beautifully crafted and so beautifully created that this character, which is the other piece of this, the social commentary, this being a psychological thriller, that what men have done to women and how her husband put her in this place because he couldn't deal with her and her artistry, her creativity, and her mood swings. And he didn't know what to do. And he put her there and he left her there. And she's been there for over 30 years. So those were the things that really interested me and were compelling for me.
Yeah, it definitely goes from, who the hell is this crazy old lady, get her away from me, to something much more tender and sweet. And, once we get to sort of dip into Dory's story and see who she represents in our world, that, that there was a time where if a husband didn't really like how his wife was behaving, he could just drop her off at one of these institutions. And that's not made up. Like, that's a real, that's just the truth. And that is horrific. And, so like the way in which, elements of those stories, feed into Pepper's own story, the way that he sort of internalizes that and learns to care for these people, learns to show up for them. And the way that they are, there is definitely a sort of an odd buddy comedy kind of happening in all directions from Pepper's perspective. And I really loved the Dory Pepper storyline. I thought it was incredibly sweet and moving, and the way that it evolves was really fun to play with.
Oh, that's such an interesting question. Dory is essentially the lonely one. Dory is the one who very much needs to be the one who knows everything, the one who welcomes people into the system. And then you find out other things about her, how she has had to do things in order to cope in a system like this. And because he becomes her, not just her friend, but her comrade, her compatriot, and how much he means to her, that there is a way in which he comes to know her and care for her in a way that you wouldn't have suspected. And that tells you a lot about him. And then she, in her own way, has the same feeling for him. And that transforms her. And then we find out that I can't tell you things. I don't want to spoil things.
Right. Of course.
That we find out that she actually, in her deep and sorrowful way, has had to let go of him. And because that's so for both of them, the transformation between them within the dynamics of the relationship gets very complicated. And because of that, there has to be an ending that we don't ever suspect.
Right.
How's that?
Great answer. And you're pretty good at teasing stuff without giving it away, Judith Light.
Thank you. I've been instructed well. Thank you.
Yeah, so he, goes from sort of an impulsive, reckless male who, the world is the problem, and I'm going to solve it with my fists, to having to, face up to his own demons, face the ghosts of his past, own a lot of his shit, frankly, and step up to the plate and care for people that he might not have, and including his own family, his own son.
There's that woman, I call her the blinkers, the woman with blinkers on. She is like, look, I run through this park every day. I think of her almost like a horse, you know. I go through this park every day. Sometimes I step over a pothole. Sometimes it's a quick ride. Sometimes the passenger is too heavy and I go a little slower. But this is what it is. And she doesn't change much for what's happening. And what Dan Stevens' character does, Pippa, he breaks the mold several times over, where you're forced to confront not him but yourself, and I think that's her unfortunate situation, and it's something that she just has to deal with. But it reflects on a lot of us, on things that we don't want to address, and then we have to.
Right. They're kind of two levels of monsters in this.
Right.